afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Boulders Brass. We're still on the Podcast-a-thon. If you're watching this into the future, it's Friday the 28th of January 2022, and this is, I think, our fifth panel of the day, and I am very, very privileged to be joined by this lovely group of people, and we're going to be sort of throwing around some ideas about all things to do with brass bands, which I'm sure we all know and love. So I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves and give us a bit of an idea of how you're involved in banding, and then we've got a fairly wide range of questions for us to cover. So Sam, I'm going to throw to you first.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thanks Mel for inviting me on. I'm Sam Wyne, and I suppose with my brass band kind of hat on, I play for Wantage Silver Band. We're an organisation of over 150 members, and I play solo euphonium for our championship section band. I do some teaching there. I'm also a trustee of the organisation. It's quite a beast in Wantage from such a little town, and we're really proud of what we do.
Yeah, it's very impressive what you've got going on there, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it as we go along. Julie, I'm coming to you next.
Hello, thanks, and nice to see you again, Melissa. I live in Cumbria, but I have lived in Leicester for a long time, which is where I got involved with brass bands. So I've played with various bands there. I now play with Kirby Stephen Silver Band, and I'm also the chair of that band. I run a beginner band here in T-Bay, and I work with Brass Bands England on their Equality, Diversity and Inclusion working group.
Amazing. I think we've all got some bits that are all going to cross over to do with our banding and all different roles as well. I've chosen this panel well. Very pleased that you're all here. Stu, I'm going to come to you again.
Hi, nice to see you, and thank you for having me. My name's Stuart Black. I am a flugel player predominantly. I also, for the last 15 years, have been a conductor and a brass teacher, working predominantly with lower level bands and youth bands. I'm also one of the tutors with the National Children's Band of Scotland, and I also am the Scottish area representative for the National Association of Brass Band Conductors.
Amazing. So it's not really for me to tell people too much about me, because it's my podcast and most people know, but for the purposes of this discussion, I grew up in brass banding in Cambridgeshire. I then went and did a classical music degree where I didn't do any banding for a really long time. And when I graduated, I went back to banding a little bit. And now mostly my work with banding is teaching. I teach with Syston Band in Leicestershire. I have taught with the Wantage organisation. I've taught with drum and brass. Stuart, I'm yet to come and teach for you. I'm on my way, don't worry. And conducting bands from the 4th to the championship section on a freelance basis. So that's sort of my involvement. And like I said, I took a break from banding for a while, but I came back because I missed it, and I do really like it. So my first question for everybody, and I wonder, there's fewer enough of us here that we can sort of just take it in turns without needing to sort of raise hands too much. It's not that big a meeting. I'm wondering then, what is your favourite thing about brass bands? What is it that draws you in?
Can I start?
Yeah, go on.
I came to music late in life, and so I tried out various things on like a crash course in what is music all about. And I did the orchestra thing, and then I did the brass band thing. And I like brass bands because it's affordable, it's community focused, you get a fantastic instrument from the start as soon as you walk through the door. It's kind of an all ages model, which is unique, I think. Of all of the musical genres, other genres are available, but it's unique. It offers you a place to socialise, and it also offers you kind of a passport anywhere you go in the country to go to other people and connect. So those are just a few of the things that I love about, and the music, that's good as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a bit of a loser in some respects, because in a couple of months ago, I actually moved. I'm the closest member to our band hall now. So I literally live across the road from the band hall here in Wantage, and it wasn't just that. There was a lot of other factors in the move. but being so close, I find that for me, band is almost like, it sounds really cliche, but almost like your second family. And I've got my closest friends are in the band, and just doing that twice a week, particularly like through the pandemic, going there twice a week, at a minimum, was a real escape as well, from just sort of the everyday. When you do music as a profession and as a job in the day, as well as what you do at band in the evenings, it's nice to kind of break it up and actually have that social element to it.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said. Certainly the social element of things is a huge factor for me in brass bands. It almost is like a second family, especially when you're in the right band, for the want of a better expression. You make friends that you will keep for life. And it's also, there's something about it, it's kind of like the kind of relationship to sports in a way, where you go on stage, but you're a team. You perform, whether it's a concert or a contest or whatever it might be, but you go out there together. And there's something about being on a stage and performing with your mates that kind of, it resonates. Amongst obviously the elements of actually performing pieces that everyone will know these days. I think there's been a real shift in the repertoire where you can actually almost make brass bands sound cool, as well as everything else. But certainly for me, the main thing is definitely social, getting to meet new people and, as I say, perform with your friends.
Yeah, as a general rule, I find banders are quite friendly as well. Sometimes you get a call, can you come and play for my band? And it can be, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Can you come and play this outside fete with us? Yeah, all right, why not? And they're always so grateful and so welcoming. I'd like to be clear on this. Even though I am a professional musician, anything I do within the bandosphere that isn't teaching or conducting, that isn't in that professional capacity, when I go to play for bands, I don't get paid. So I'm not seeing it as a work opportunity. For me, it is just, making contacts and playing for fun, and I don't put as much pressure on myself because I'm there to have a nice time, and I always feel very welcomed, no matter where I go, which is very, very sweet of them. And for me, and I'm sorry, Mum, because I know you're listening to this, but for me, it's a nice thing that I get to do with my family. I say that because my mum doesn't play, but my dad and my brother do. So, I posted a photo to Facebook just before Christmas, and I did a gig with my dad and my brother, and it was just such a nice thing to do at home over Christmas that I could enjoy with them, like back in my home community as well. It's always a little nostalgia there for me. Anyway, there I am answering my own questions again. Sounds about right, doesn't it? This is what I do. I write interviews that I would like to answer, so I just join in.
Quite right too.
So I wonder sort of though, on the balancing side to this, if there is anything that any of us would like to amend or change about the banding movement, or include. I don't want to say sort of improve, because it's a historical model, it clearly works, it's been around for hundreds of years, but I wonder if there's anything that we'd like to change or add to it.
Well, I think if it's okay to start,
of course.
I think one of the big challenges for I'm particularly finding at the moment is a couple of things. There's lots of things, but the biggest thing really is this kind of idea of developing an audience, and it's really interesting. We did a huge project just before Christmas. We kind of jumped on the bandwagon of the Snowman, and we did our kind of family concert, and we sold out 4 performances, made lots of money for the band, and brought a really unique experience, including cinema, to Wantage, which is amazing. But now we go back to doing the more traditional concert in February, and we sell tickets. We've got an amazing guest soloist coming in, and we've sold a fair few. COVID obviously doesn't help as well, but going back to that sort of evening traditional concert in a hall, for your more average brass band audience, it's a real challenge. And I'd like to kind of, that for me at the moment, that's what we're kind of trying to do. And do you just do family concerts in the afternoons to get a big audience, or do you carry on slaving away at these kind of, because the thing is, you know, the venues and stuff, they cost so much money to put everything on. And if you can't break even, then it's quite tricky to kind of put that on. We're not looking, don't get me wrong, we're not looking to make money, we're looking to break even. So we can have that really great experience of playing together as a band in front of a nice, friendly audience. So that's one thing for me, anyway.
Yeah, and maybe we can circle back to that later as well, and think about, you know, what modernizations and concert models and things are useful, because I know there are bands that are largely doing now, not necessarily just family concerts, but they're putting most of their concerts in the afternoon.
But I do, yeah,
yeah, it's interesting.
I would say, I would agree with you, Mel. I mean, just looking at some of the real top bands out there, they're doing 3 o'clock weekend concerts, and they seem to go really well. So I don't know, maybe that is the way we are moving, but it's certainly something to look at.
That is interesting. I heard that from another organisation who was doing completely different kind of music, but again, daytime, family orientated, was getting them better audiences. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think my one point I'm obliged to make, but it's still obvious, isn't it, that we're all monochrome, and we're not a monochrome country. We're a really diverse mixed country, and yet the band world is not reflecting that yet. And we're making start. In fact, Melissa and me have worked together on that a little bit, and it's not for lack of enthusiasm by our players. I think there needs to be more done, probably, to facilitate progression. She said, I've been writing funding bids all month. Facilitate progression and build pathways. Brass bands have got everything available at their fingertips to do that, I think, because we don't stick to one kind of music, and we've got so much flexibility, really, and great players and loads of experience and intergeneration. You know, it's all there, and I think it's just opening our hearts a bit and grasping out and saying, hey, we can do this. We can be reflective.
Do you think, Julie, we need to sort of get the banding world to pair with or learn from people like Chineke Foundation?
That's an interesting point, because Chineke aren't doing, and they're not really changing the scene. They are black and brown players, but they're still playing in the Western tradition. I think we can do more, even. I think
in terms of profile raising, though, in terms of expanding,
it would be great to talk to Chineke.
That's what I wondered.
It would be, yeah. I mean, they are a almost kind of a part of the proms tradition now, aren't they? That they're there every year and people expect to see them, and they do is it Florence White piece, and maybe there's something there we need to have a look at. But I think we can look at community more and talk to people more, open conversations, I reckon. Because Chineke is peopled by musicians at the very highest level, isn't it? And whereas most of us are working with people who are in our immediate vicinity. So yeah, I think there's probably work at both ends, actually, top level flight and grassroots.
Yeah, because I know it's something that like, you know, your work with Brass Bands England to one side, I mean, it's something that you've been working on with drum and brass for a long time, and we've worked a lot with beginner musicians and starting them off and trying to get them to progress and stick with it. Do you, and I wonder, this is a question for everyone, and maybe it'll come back again later, we all work within brass bands and brass education. Do you notice a gap then between like beginners and people that continue playing, whether that's, you know, to go and study music, or, you know, adults that continue in their hobby? Do you think there's a gap where people drop out from our diverse community of learners?
Yes.
Yeah, I would probably say there is. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, certainly I know up here that for a long time there was a point where if you hadn't have them hooked, or you didn't have them hooked, the kind of genre or the idea, it was you almost were waiting to see what was going to happen next, because other things started to come into play that would maybe force them off on a different path. So yeah, I guess the problem is, I mean, I think there's gaps certainly within the education system, going between whether it be learners to the next phase, or whether it be, the kind of well, up here it's like the hires and advanced hires, so A levels sort of idea, and then university, there's certainly a gap there as well. So yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah, I think there definitely is a gap. It's just how to bridge that and how to make it as kind of minimal a gap, because I think there's always going to be a case where there will be some form of gap. It's just how to make that as minimal as possible.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, where I was sort of wondering was, like, especially in the work that Julie and I have done, is that we have this really diverse pool of young players, and then we don't see them getting into the bands. Like you said, Julie, we are still fairly monochrome in the adult bands. It's curious.
I think maybe there's something about with when beginner players are like have that whole joy of making the sound, and that's a great boost, and then the hard work kicks in, and it's keeping people engaged when it gets hard work, but also when they're in environments where people don't look like them, and maybe the repertoire is perhaps alien. Perhaps we need a bit more cool repertoire, and there is a lot out there, but I think there's always the problem where that young people want to play the latest hits, but you can't arrange a latest hit because it's copyrighted. So it's complicated. I think repertoire. I think maybe just the whole of the language of music it can be alien if you're not grown up in that culture. So we're looking at people who've not got a musical culture all around them that we maybe enjoyed when we were younger. I think it's fascinating, and I spend a lot of hours thinking about it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a fair point to consider that, the modern band movement doesn't look like the modern society that we live in. It's a good point, and it's something that gets the cogs turning. Anyway, I've gone completely off piece because, Stu, we hadn't heard your thing to improve yet, and I've asked another question, so that's completely on me.
No, it's all right. I mean, to be honest, I kind of agreed with what's already been said from that perspective as well. I mean, it's something that improving the kind of brass band marketing side of things and getting them out to, whether it be working with other genres of music, or whether it be building the profile in general. It's funny, there's a lady who is a kind of music fan that comes to my local band which I conduct, and she comes to the concerts and stuff like that, and she's always telling me how she'd love to hear more brass bands on Classic FM. She'd love to hear more brass bands on these different places, and I kind of get the point. It would be nice to hear more of a profile on these places. But I mean, I think in general, it's making sure brass bands continue to be inclusive, continue to develop, continue to offer opportunities and a pathway, and not kind of be seen as it's a brass band. It'd be nice to see those pathways open up for people to then take on, whether it be, obviously some people go on and they do music college, or whether it be, more avenues into some form of professional playing jobs on top of that. It's the inclusiveness is a huge part,
Yeah, inclusivity is very important, and I don't know if any of you have ever had an experience in a band, and I talked earlier about how in general I find bands to be very welcoming. I don't know if any of you have ever had an interaction with a band where you haven't felt included or very welcomed. I have, unfortunately, once, and I shan't tell the story again because I know a couple of you definitely already know it already. If you do want to know the story, you can drop me a message later on. I'll tell you the whole thing. But as somebody who's been in that position once before, it was quite a knockback. you know, it didn't make me feel very warm towards banding for a little while. And that's a one-off for me once. So I totally understand what you're saying, that if it was, you know, people don't see people that look like them in their band, or they're not engaging with the music, or they're not, you know, feeling included, and that's a regular thing, why they might not want to join in or engage. It's interesting. Interesting.
I only I actually only came to like proper banding, like contest banding, if you like, when I was maybe 18, when I started at I studied at Birmingham Conservatoire, and when I started at Birmingham, that's kind of when that started. And when I got to 20, I'm like in the LGBT community, so like I'm being gay and being married. That was a huge thing for me at the time. And the biggest, I remember having I was taught by Katrina Marzella at the time, the baritone player. I remember having the conversation quite clearly with her, telling her, just saying, I'm really worried about going to band, because I was in a very kind of, you know, male-dominated band, which many are, and thinking, oh, like, how's that going to go down? You know, not that it would be a big announcement or anything, but, you know, now that is a thing, how would that be seen? And I was very, very, you know, kind of scared about that. But actually, I mean, it was all fine. I don't know what I was worried about. But it does cross your mind, because you're in this kind of, you don't want things to change. And equally, as you said, like the band movement needs to move more forward with that inclusivity. But yeah, I think everyone has maybe some slight worries over it, and you do think, oh, am I going to fit in? But 9 times out of 10 you are, because you're always welcome wherever you go. And it's true what sorry, I forgot your name, but Julie, it's true what Julie said earlier about it's just you've got that passport to any band.
Yeah, I think it's true. So I'm curious then about things to do with banding repertoire and the music that we play. So we've got 2 sort of different questions about this, and one of them, I will confess, I had to go and do some research on, and we'll come to that in a second. The first one has kind of 2 parts, and it's, what's your favourite standard piece of brass band repertoire, and your favourite sort of non-standard piece of brass band repertoire, if there's something a little bit off the wall that you've played. So like my favourite one, standard repertoire, is The Essence of Time. I've spoken about this a lot. My partner, if he's listening to this, is shaking his head. We have very different opinions on the wonderful work of Peter Graham. And sort of non-standard pieces, I can't remember the names of the pieces that I've got in mind, but there's a contest piece that's written with drum kit. Duncan, you're going to kill me because I can't remember what it was, but it was a great choice. It'll come back to me at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, / if I mute myself and do some Googling in a second. But I can't remember what that one is. And a couple of the things that Simon Dobson has written, which are a little bit more modern. They've got that drum kit kind of grungy vibe to them, which is very up my alley. So that's my sort of standard, non-standard. Who wants to go next?
I remember when I was doing contesting, which was quite a while ago now, the Tallis Variations was on the list, and I just loved that. I really loved it. So that'd be my top favourite standard. Non-standard, I mean, I've ventured far into the non-standard area, and I suppose improvising on a balcony in the church, just making it up with like 3 other band brass players round a balcony. That was really lovely, and because like brass church, echoey, lovely. That was lovely. We could have gone on for hours. The audience would have loved it.
Shall I go next?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, you've actually said 2 pieces that would be on my list. Essence of Time, Tallis Variations. I love them. I don't know what it is about them, particularly Essence of Time. I remember having really fond memories of doing it at college. And it's just this one euphonium bit that is just absolutely mental. And I just remember it honestly looks like a spider's just drawn over it, this kind of shape. And it's great. But I would say there's a couple of pieces more as I really like anything by Edward Gregson. I'm a real fan of Gregson's music. And I just a couple of years ago, we we didn't actually play it out, I don't think, but we went to the Scottish Open, that was it. We went to the Scottish Open. There was a choice of 3 Gregson test pieces, and one of which was Old Distant Memories, which I absolutely love. But we chose Rococo Variations, which I wasn't so pleased with. But I learned it nonetheless, and we did all right. But no, I really like Old Distant Memories, and anything by Ever Gregson's great. Non-standard wise, I don't know. I don't think I'm a very non-standard person now. I think these. I think I do quite like 2 hours on a test piece. It's really sad, isn't it? I know what you mean about the Simon Dobson stuff. That is really good. I quite like some of the kind of, there's kind of like things that have been transcribed for brass band, like the Eric Whittaker stuff's really lovely.
Oh yeah.
And like I always remember doing the Planets, the band, but it was with like a double band. We did it at college with Chadiga Town Band, and
Wow.
I remember it just being ridiculous to have like 10 basses playing Mars. It was a bit much, to be honest, for the Adrian Bolt at the time. But it was quite something.
That's quite cool. I've just found the name of the piece, by the way. It was Hypercube by Oliver Vaseby.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Got a hard to say surname. Sorry, I should learn how to say it. That was the piece. Google is my friend. Sorry, Stu. I keep doing that to you. I'm sorry.
Right. That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, I mean, standard repertoire. I mean, I'm a fan of some of the classics like Resurgam and whatnot. But if I had to pick a favourite, it would probably be, funny you mentioned Gregson, Variations in Laudate Dominum. It has a special place for me, being the first test piece I ever conducted. The non-standard, certainly Simon Dobson's stuff is brilliant. We did a piece of this called Firefly with the Borders Youth Band a few years ago, which is brilliant, that kind of drum and bass style idea. I'm also a big fan of some of the African arrangements that have been done of late. That kind of, whether it be African lullabies or some of the more kind of percussive stuff, seems to resonate well with me at the minute as well. So.
Nice. And so the sort of linked question to this one, and this is the one I had to do a little bit of research on, was that one of our friends from the States asked, are there any pieces or any composers that we know of that are not written by or are not white men?
I don't know any.
And it's hard. I didn't know any. I had to look some up, and I'm so glad I did. I know that there's a couple of test pieces out there and a couple of commissioned pieces. Erilyn Wallen's written a couple of really interesting pieces for brass band. She writes really nicely for brass, and she was one of the composition teachers when I was at college. And what was the one that... Well, this is terrible, isn't it, that I'm having to ask questions about this? I'm going to have to go back to my friend Google after this. The test piece that was by the lady, someone's going to be screaming at me in the comments. I'm sure that they are. I'm not going to look at them till we're off of this. Who was the person that wrote Prague?
Oh,
Her name begins with an E. It's like just here in my brain. Anyway,
yeah.
An unusual piece written by a woman that unusually was not well received. And it's hard to know for which reason. I wouldn't like to speculate.
Rock hard, that's why.
Exactly. I'm going to have to look at the name up.
I don't know, in the brass band repertoire, there's a few that's come through of late, like Liz Lane and Lucy Pankhurst are two that kind of spring to mind, certainly. Yeah.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because there are so many people whose names, if I say Philip Spark, we're all going to nod and say, yeah, we know Philip Spark and Edward Gregson and Peter Graham. And they've all written brilliant stuff for band. This is not me at all trying to have a downer on anyone that's already written stuff for band at all. That's not the point of this question or the point of this discussion. But it's such a shame we're in 2022 and I had to research it and I had the questions well in advance, so I had time to research it. But there aren't as many... I'm saying households. I realise that not every household spends their time talking about brass like mine does. But, as many well-known names of women composers, of non-binary and trans composers, of black and brown musicians, indigenous musicians writing for band, and I'm sure they are writing for band. And it is, I think, particularly if you like, it's one area that we definitely need to improve on is what we're playing.
I would say the same for beginner levels as well, because that's where we can actually make change in the mindset with and engage people. If there was more music for early levels, obviously the beginner levels, your 2-note pieces, you know, they could be called anything, but I was also thinking, like someone was saying that Brass for Africa, when people in Africa are learning, the beginners are learning African tunes by ear, and it would be lovely to hear those tunes that they're learning as beginners with, and have maybe for someone to write them down that our beginners to share those. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, it's one of my new targets. I'm sort of doing some auditions with bands at the moment. If I get the positions that I'm applying for, it's one of my targets is to try to include one piece per concert program by a living composer of, you know, whichever gender or ethnicity, but it's an attainable goal. And anyone that's listening to this, if you think, oh, they're being such morons, by they, I mean me, she's being such a moron, that she doesn't know of all these great pieces, please do let us know of any pieces that we should know about and we don't know about, because I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that, like, we want to expand our repertoire, and bands do like exploring new music. That's not the case. It's not the cause for it at all. But please let us know. Composers of the world.
It's always the case, isn't it? That it's not to take away from what we have. It's to add to it. Even more fabulous stuff, and with a slightly different slant. To, you know, who knows what it would sound like, and that's the exciting thing.
Yeah,
it's always nice to try new pieces, new music all the time, kind of freshen things up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So the next question I've got sort of loops back a little bit to something we were talking about earlier, so it maybe gives us a bit more room to brainstorm on this. And it is, you know, in a constantly modernizing world, what can we do within bands to keep up? You know, to keep people interested and to keep ourselves relevant.
$1 million question.
It is the $1 million question.
I think that I use technology for the management, for all of the outer stuff, and I like to keep the instruments as instruments, because then you're not struggling for a plug socket at an open air festival or something. That's my thinking. I use a lot of digital management-y type stuff, your social media and all of that, but then the music is music. But I know that
again, just going back to what I said earlier about concerts, that's one area we moved to as well. I've been in the band for 8 years, and I've never, like, when we put a concert on, we put posters out nearby local places. People would phone up, grab their paper tickets and like that. And so at Christmas, we decided to try and do them digitally. Well, it works an absolute treat at Christmas, but I'm getting all the usual places that normally sell tickets are saying, oh, people have been quiet and you're not selling tickets. I said, oh, well, I thought going digital would move us forward and would make it easier for everyone just to buy the tickets. Oh, no, they don't want that. They want to buy their paper tickets. So, but I guess it's kind of that, you kind of take for granted maybe that not everyone, maybe that's not easy for everyone, but it needs to be that kind of option for both to keep it, like we said, we're talking about inclusive a lot, aren't we? And it's not being very inclusive because it's only digital. Yeah, definitely to keep up with the modern day world is one. I think it's step by step, isn't it? It's not all at once. That's kind of become clear for me just this week.
It's difficult because I guess you're never going to please everybody, are you? But I guess if you're able to do the digital form and the paper form, it's kind of ticking two boxes. But you're right. I mean, it's one of these things where, I mean, certainly for concerts in particular, it's funny you mentioned the Snowman, the band I play for up here are talking about doing that as well this Christmas coming. So it's I've got that to look forward to come the end of the year. But it's finding ways that's going to engage. But I mean, it's difficult because I mean, on the one hand, you want to kind of keep your band engaged, keep the band really thinking about what they're doing, without going down the route of just doing kind of pop tunes, for the want of a better word. So it's finding that balance of really kind of bringing something through. But I suppose at the same time, obviously, over the last 2 years, we've learned a lot about technology, and we've learned a lot about kind of things that we've maybe never even considered up until now. So maybe including some of them is going to be a good thing. Like, I mean, Julie mentioned the admin side of things. Obviously, that's a thing that can help, obviously, from our band point of view. But you know, is there ways we can include technology from a performance perspective, like with the Snowman?
Yeah, another way of, another point of inclusivity is that I've when we couldn't go to events, but events were still going on, I bought quite a lot of tickets to watch things from home. I thought this is quite a nice way. When I don't have time to travel to an event, but I want to see it, I can still support the organisation and watch the concert, but I don't have to go anywhere. I mean, I know that there's been a couple of contests that have been live streamed the same way. I mean, I don't know if this is a sort of suggestion that then comes with prohibitive costs, because, banding isn't a movement making loads and loads of money. And if we're being realistic, you don't want to be spending more than you're making, like Sam was saying about breaking even on events. But is that another way that we can reach a wider audience? Can we live stream a concert and sell further tickets? I don't know. This is really me just like playing slightly devil's advocate, but we're talking about technology and reaching a wider audience. I mean,
no, I think you're right, Melissa. I think that is a really good idea, because then you've got your live audience and an audience that maybe isn't mobile, or people in care homes, all sorts of different
I mean, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? I really do think there is market for an online concert, and maybe even a hybrid, like you suggested, too. But I do worry that at the moment, obviously, that option's great, because there's a lot of other stuff going on in the world, and people sometimes don't want to leave their house. But I think under normal circumstances, would people choose to watch it online and not live? And then you've got another whole problem, haven't you? Because if your local people choosing to watch it online, then you could be doing it from your band hall. It doesn't really make much difference, because there you haven't got an audience in front of you. I think online will never go away now. I think we have lots and lots of meetings at Wantage, committee meetings and board meetings and things. I'm not sure if we'll ever do a meeting in person again now, when we could do it like this. It's so much easier in spare time. But I think it would need to be very thoroughly thought through if that was going to be something you do as a standard in your concerts, because I would worry that and also the audience I don't know, some of you might disagree, maybe it's an argument waiting to happen, but I don't think you get the same experience watching it at home as well. It's a different experience. It's a good experience still, but it's a very different experience. And
it's similar to performing, isn't it? It's okay, putting on a performance for a kind of virtual idea, but there's nothing that compares to the live feeling than actually being in a hall or being on a stage or whatever it might be.
Alex Kenyon, who was chatting about this, and she really is very good with technology, was suggesting that rehearsals online, so that people could see what a band is like to be involved with. And that sounded really interesting. That's something I've been thinking about, just to show people who have no clue what it is like to go into a band room and do a rehearsal, but maybe they're interested in having a go. That to give them that experience, and that's a safe place, especially as music can be a little bit, not worthy. So it would give people a taster of, okay, it's not totally scary. You can make a wrong note, or you can play in the rest, and it's okay. Don't get shot. You do, obviously. But.
You do get shot. Do you know what things are like up north? I'm not going up there.
Not in your band.
Yeah, I think that's quite a nice way of thinking about using social media and the internet in like a less sort of barrier way. Is people love behind the scenes, and like some of my best posts for the podcast are often like if I share a photo of like my desk. There's something about being nosy, and like my desk is a bloody mess. Like where I'm sitting right now is chaos. There's something about that nosy behind the scenes, like feeling like you're included in doing something a bit sneaky. So I quite like that idea, Julie, of sort of little.
I think about it every week. It takes a little bit of setting up though, a lot of consents and a lot of,
Also, I don't know many band halls that have got Wi-Fi.
Good point.
That's a big old data dip if you want
live stream. Can you live stream from your phone?
You can do, but your data will take a massive hit for 2 hours. So that's the only downside.
Rehearsal last. Sorry, is there a delay?
Sorry, there was a hiccup. I think it's my internet.
Christmas, I was going to say, last Christmas we tried doing a live stream caroling session. We did it maybe once every weekend for like 2 or 3 weeks, and that seemed to go down quite well actually. And people could comment requesting their carols because you weren't really able to do caroling at the time. So we just did it. We just called it Carols from the Band Hall, and it was really popular locally. And we had like our sort of, we did text donate. So we had our text donate message down the bottom of the screen, and that worked really well actually. And we haven't got Wi-Fi actually. We're just having we're having an extension built, and that will have Wi-Fi in it. So that will be a massive relief when we've got it. But we just ran it through our, through 4G, and it seemed to go down well. It's just all these new innovative things that we can kind of on, isn't it? And I think a lot of people, this whole idea of video promotion rather than sending a photo or text, if people can click on a video and see what's going on, it brings it to life in seconds, doesn't it? Rather than you having to skim read through text to find out actually what it is that's being sold. So I think if someone sees a live stream of a rehearsal coming up and they think, I want to be involved in that, that's much quicker, isn't it, than actually seeing a photo and trying to imagine what it would be like to be in that band.
Yeah, amazing. We are modernising our bands. Look at us go. Look at us go. Hundreds of years old model. So
writing these ideas down.
I've got one more question that I'd like to sort of shoe in, and we've sort of talked about it a little bit. And this one sort of how do we get the next generation interested in band, and how do we keep them interested in band so that the banding movement still has legs 50 years from now?
Well, it starts off with children, really, doesn't it? I mean, we quite fortunate because we offer lessons to children and adults. We've got bands that support all abilities, whether that be beginner adults, beginner children, intermediate, right up to advanced. But the success for us has been going out into schools, forming in school assemblies and recruiting that way. And we're very lucky to have, most of the schools in Wantage are covered by one academy chain. So it makes it quite easy to get into all of them. And one of us, so our flugel player in the band, she basically gave up her full-time job to become a brass teacher, and she's now pretty much, I think she's oversubscribed. I think her whole week is full of brass students at about 6 different schools locally. So we've got that constant pool of beginner students coming into the band. But I guess, for us, that's kind of where it starts. But it's very difficult. Sorry to hog, but it is very difficult because, I mean, in my job away from banding, I'm selling contemporary instrumental and vocal lessons. So, and I stand there in front of an assembly, and I've done both. I've done brass, and now I'm doing it more as a kind of facilitator, host of an assembly, introducing like a live band, and it's sort of like a gig with electric guitars, bass guitars, drum kits, etc. It's such an easier sell to kids, and I don't want brass to become extinct by any stretch. But for example, we've started 70 children in one school at the beginning of last term, all on guitar and drums. I did the same thing at a nearby school on brass, and I recruited 5. So I think trying to bring brass more into that contemporary world, which is maybe more current and relevant and more appealing to not only the kids but the parents as well. That's a real challenge, but I think it's something we need to try and do more of. I think if you're in a place where the brass band is known throughout the town, like the reputation really, really helps, and they think, oh, I want to be a member of the band. So, and I live in the town, so it's the thing you do. That's probably where we have our success, and maybe more success than other providers, but it's a real challenge.
Yeah, I think that choice is a real thing. If the brass band is the choice, you've got to stop with those drum and guitar things.
No, I know.
But then someone have a job. We want someone to have a job still.
I know. We do brass as well, but yeah, everyone gets to choose. There's too much choice, isn't there, in some ways?
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of pull on young people's time, isn't there? And I thought, I'm an ex-teacher, and I will remain an ex-teacher until I die. I just always stuck with that, learning how to teach. If we're good at teaching, like teachers have to be in the classroom, that's going to help, isn't it? That's going to help. I feel like being really professional and, making sure that parents and families know that they're getting something very high quality here is really important. We know that it's a social life and a passport forever, but that means nothing to children. And I suppose we've got to convince parents as much as anyone, haven't we, that it's worth doing the taxi rides. So yeah.
I would agree with that. It's a few years ago, before the pandemic, I did a recruitment workshop here in Galashiels, where I am now, and we were lucky enough to get about 20 kids. I did the same workshop for another band, which was doing a workshop in a school about 2 miles outside of its town. So the band maybe wasn't as well known to the parents, and we got 2 kids. So I think there is something about actually appealing to the parents to say, this is something that would be worth getting your kids along to. Because, like the kids, obviously the parents have a busy day as well. They have a full day at work, and then to come home, and obviously they've got taxi duties, as you just said. So it's making sure we appeal on all fronts, and making sure it's something that, they know that they're going to get real enjoyment from. I guess we're in this phase though at the moment where a good friend of mine always says we have to hit the reset button just now because of the pandemic, and start and just drive it. And we can only hope that as long as we're putting out a bit of enthusiasm and putting out the kind of enjoyment we get from it, that the kids will see that and kind of light that spark for it.
Yeah, when I talk to my students who are involved in bands, particularly the ones who are involved in bands that I'm not involved in, sounds like this is going somewhere really miserable. What I mean is I have some students that come to me as a private teacher, but they play in other local youth bands. I don't know what their band is really like because I don't work there. That was a better way to put that sentence the first time. But when I ask them, sometimes they'll come along with this music and they're like, I don't really love this piece. And I'm like, okay, but do we still like going to band? And she's like, oh yeah, I love to play my euphonium and I love to see my friends. And it's basically what we said at the beginning are our favourite things about band. It's like we like to play our instrument, we like to play the music, and we like to see our pals. So I think that's, that if we can create that same environment for the kids, and we do for them what we said we like from bands at the beginning, then it's that appealing environment, isn't it?
Oh, and the other thing, I did a survey, and all of the musicians in that survey, and they were from all different backgrounds and all different ages, said refreshments.
That's funny. Yeah, a cup of tea.
Cup of tea.
That was one thing that the band I grew up in used to always do that I don't see very many other places anymore, and we haven't got enough time to deep dive into why we don't have a cup of tea anymore, but it was one thing we always did. We took 10 minutes in the middle of rehearsal so that everyone could have a chat, have a quick catch up, have a cup of tea, brain break, refreshed, second half of rehearsal. And it was just like, it's easy for the time to run away, and then your rehearsals can get less productive. But it's something I always kind of weirdly remember when I think of band when I was a kid, was that like I got to chat to the grown-ups and they would take an interest in what I was doing, and like there's no other way. It's not like I was popping down the pub with my band pals after band because I was 9 and they were 50. Do you know what I mean? But we still had an interest, and we were still technically friends, but it was a way that we could spend that time. So I wonder that the refreshments thing is kind of curious. Is that little social time?
Maybe there's more to it. Maybe we're British after all. Like a cup of tea.
Quite possibly. Banter, music, friends and cups of tea. Well, that brings us to a completely ridiculous place to stop, which is my ideal way of ending a chat. But I am keeping an eye on the time, because if I'm not careful, I'm going to run each panel for way too long today. But I really appreciate you all coming and bouncing these ideas around with me and taking part in the podcast-a-thon. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, and well done for everything you've done so far. It's been great.
Thank you. We're
Brilliant.
Not far off the target now, about 30% left to raise, so hopefully we can get there soon. So there's a slightly unceremonious way that I have to end the live stream, and that is just to cut the call. So in order to do that, I will bid you all adieu. Thank you very much. Keep in touch. See you soon.
Nice to see you guys.
See you now.
Bye. Bye. Bye.